The Acolyte, Episode 7, the penultimate episode, the episode that promised to reveal the answers to the many, many questions clumsily teased over and over again in the previous episodes. The few shills who were telling us to just wait and see what they've got in store were disappointed beyond their wildest imagination.
Power of
Just to be clear, this isn't supposed to be a comedy, right?
Nope, it's a fanfic of the absolute worst kind at best. This is episode 3, take 2, from the Jedi perspective, the episode that promised to answer all the questions. The Jedi are working, and what the hell are these guys supposed to be doing? Is that a metal detector? I'd like to give them credit that it's something a lot more meaningful and high-tech, but apparently the Jedi High Council routinely sends Jedi Masters out to random planets to find doubloons and bottle caps to fund the Jedi retirement plan.
Did I see Carrie Ann picking moss?
Toman Baratheon reveals that not only does he have no idea why they're even there, but that he's also waited a full 7 weeks to even ask that question. How does he even know what he's looking for if you haven't told him? If they're looking for a virgins in the Force, they actually have scientific equipment for that? Are they stuffing moss into a midichlorian detector?
That's not how the Force works.
He got whiny and bored after 7 weeks, but then later apparently does something so bad he spends 10 years in meditation. Okay.
And then ends up drinking poison, even though he didn't do anything wrong?
By the way, they also point out that this used to be a mining planet before the hyperspace incident that apparently had wiped all life off of it. Wouldn't it have made sense to visit the mine first? Wouldn't they have detected the power output from orbit? The witches had the place lit up. No one would have noticed this huge lit tower in the air for 2 months. So anyway, after 2 flippin' months, they finally decide to now split up, and Master Soul finds young Rue and Rick James from episode 3. He does the proper bit of calling it in, but we never hear a response, so we can only assume it didn't get through. He follows them to the fortress and they go inside. At this point, especially considering he hasn't gotten a hold of the others, he should have gone back to report the location and return with backup. He has no idea what's in there. It could be a hive of lesbian CrossFit vegan rancors for all he knows. But no, he goes inside, sees some more of episode 3, and then finally returns to camp where he utters one of the dumbest lines of the show.
They do not treat the girls like children.
This comes from out of nowhere. Literally. All he's really seen is Darth Maulina chiding them for being outside, which is a very parental thing to do, and other mommy, head witch, teaching them to use the Force, which is also a parental thing to do.
Actually, she was teaching them to use threads.
Get out. I feel like we're watching the first draft of a script where they just barfed a bunch of random ideas onto the page, but never bothered to iron them out. So the Jedi all go to Hoover Dam and have a brief argument about going in together, where Trinity folds like a wet newspaper and they all go inside. Head Witch invades Toman Baratheon's mind, and once again we get another dose of creepy sexual stuff that seems to permeate this show.
Her past would seem to indicate that creepy is her jam.
But what's Head Witch's motivation here? She's clearly trying to influence Toman Baratheon, asks him what he wants to go home, and that's it. It's not like she's influencing him to turn on the other Jedi or digging for the Jedi's true motives or even buying for time. It's a completely pointless interaction that apparently gives Leslie just another chance to be creepy, and that's it. They return to the ship, and Master Soul says from out of nowhere that he feels a connection with Osha. Completely unearned, story-wise, and yes, a little creepy again, to be honest. You claim to have a connection with her, but you can't tell them apart? Seriously? You're the mind reader?
Maybe that plays into how he wasn't able to tell them apart when Rick James and Rue switched places as adults.
What is the point of view of this show? Leslie gave us the witch is good, Jedi bad theme, but the actions of the characters don't add up in either direction. Manipulating the mind of a Padawan, possessing the Wookiee to attack his friends, manipulating May into anger that caused her to burn down the place. How are the witches the good guys in this? With the exception of possibly Trinity, these Jedi are horribly written too. Leslie apparently doesn't even have a basic understanding of them. Toman Baratheon is overly attached to going home. Jedi aren't allowed to form attachments, and an unnatural attachment to home would definitely qualify. Master Soul is emotional to the point of hysterical. That's not a thing. He would have been kicked out of the Order long before he was granted the rank of Master. The code and systems that the Jedi live by are almost totally absent in this show, and even Trinity says absurd things. The only one who seems to have any kind of sense is the Wookiee, and that's just because we can't understand anything he says, so we're just giving him the benefit of the doubt. Leslie wanted a which is good, Jedi bad story, but this is so incredibly poorly written that she can't even deliver her own twisted agenda effectively. Anyway, this group of highly trained monks have a borderline hysterical and emotional shit fit on each other. Tommen Baratheon speeds off like a temperamental 5-year-old, apparently intending to single-handedly storm the fortress and kidnap 2 children, all just so he can go home.
This is cartoonish.
Master Soul follows, and when they arrive, our mind reader chooses now to find out what's going on inside. Why didn't he do that the first time he was there?
Maybe Leslie just forgot?
But something small yet no less ridiculous happens right here. Tommen Baratheon, after speeding over here in a mad rush, finding the door controls have been sabotaged, seems to have all the wind taken out of his sails and doesn't know what to do with himself. It's Master Soul, whose sole job was to stop Tommen Baratheon in the first place, who decides to keep going and charge into the Hoover Dam.
A middle school play would be more coherent than this.
Meanwhile, inside, Darth Maulina is mobilizing the troops, getting Rick James all worked up and angry, and basically going full Sith.
Why is she mobilizing the troops?
Excellent question. Earlier, the rest of the Coven reinforced that the Head Witch is their leader, but now they're going to instead follow orders from her wife for no reason. We then see Rick James start the fire.
I told you it wasn't Billy Joel.
And there's no reveal, no mind control as some had theorized, no secret, just a kid who literally starts a pile of rocks on fire.
Actually, the blue flame here indicates the effects team sprayed some sort of accelerant on the rocks, and you can see it pooling on the floor here.
Effing lazy. Again, same budget as House of the Dragon. Not on the screen. Where'd the money go? More people need to be asking that question. Where did the money go?
Where's the money?
Master Soul and Tommen Baratheon apparently have ziplined up Hoover Dam and are suddenly facing off against the witches. Head Witch and her angry inch are there, and Head Witch, despite being upset that her wife mobilized the troops against her wishes, decides to just not be a leader and go along with it, threatening the Jedi. But as the leader, and since she intends to let Osha go with the Jedi, she could have taken control of the situation and easily diffused the standoff.
As we've seen, everyone's motivations change more swiftly than a cranky toddler who needs his baba and a nap.
And from out of nowhere, Head Witch makes this startling declaration.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
It's meant to sound incredibly profound, but the line's ham-fisted insertion into this comedy sketch literally made me laugh out loud.
If she were that prophetic, she would have taken steps to prevent the end of her coven.
Right, you are, Doge. Rick James bursts in to warn her mother about what she's done. Master Soul misidentifies her as Osha. And then comes the dumbest moment of the episode. Despite having multiple opportunities to defuse the situation, Head Witch freaks everyone out by going full smoke monster, a move that could only be perceived as a threat under the circumstances, and even Osha starts dissolving too. Nothing throws your audience out of the narrative faster than confusing them. Startled as hell, and no doubt feeling a wave of dark force energy along with it, Master Soul plunges his lightsaber into the Head Witch, who, even while dying, tries to gaslight him by telling him that they were just going to let Osha go.
I was going to let Osha go.
Heed a person's actions, not their words.
Right you are, Doge, and because of that logic, the audience's gut reaction to that line of dialogue was that she was lying, but I don't think that was Leslie's intention. The fortress starts to explode, and all the shills who were feebly supporting this show and were adamant that there was going to be a real reason why this place was destroyed howled in disappointment because a little girl really did just light some rocks on fire. Then we get a brief exchange where Master Soul shows some concern for the welfare of the children, and the woman who earlier had made a big deal out of carrying them for 9 months shows absolutely none of that, and instead just nopes out of the situation. Enter a mind-controlled Wookiee who fights against his Jedi friends, and a moment where Tommen Baratheon shows he's as strong as a Wookiee, until Trinity leaps in from out of nowhere and breaks the witch's connection to Kalnaka, which kills them for some reason.
So the power of one Jedi was more powerful than the power of many.
Again, the shills, hoping for the show to reveal something more nefarious as to how the witches died. Poison, a battle, smoke inhalation, absolutely anything, were once again disappointed. 50 women all just dropped dead simply because the script needed them to. In The Wizard of Oz, there was a revelation of the man behind the curtain pulling the strings. And ever since that movie, that's been the analogy for revelations like this.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
This show has spent 7 episodes building up to this revelation of what really happened that night 16 years ago. Who was behind the curtain? The answer is no one. We knew this episode was coming. We knew it would be a repeat of episode 3 from the Jedi perspective, but that's all this ended up being. It revealed nothing. All of the stupid things that happened before were exactly the stupid things they appeared to be.
It literally could have been covered with a few lines of exposition or a 3-minute flashback, not an entire episode.
The only question now is, who is Khmer? He had nothing to do with this situation at all. How did he know about it and to be able to manipulate Rick James? We know due to their ham-fisted foreshadowing that Khmer was likely Leslie Headland's wife's apprentice, and she might be a secret Sith, and Headland's wife was probably the apprentice of Darth Maulina, whose fate is still unknown and would be the only logical person who would have fed these people the information on what happened that night. But all in all, this episode, the one that was supposed to have the answers, ended up being less than a filler episode. It added nothing to the story. Some have been saying that we finally have something that's worse than The Last Jedi. On a storytelling level, absolutely. But for those worried about more canon breaking, then you got nothing to be concerned about. There's nothing here. It's like chewing an ice cube. It's hard, it's cold, it's a little painful to chew, but in the end, it adds nothing in the way of calories or even pleasure. We've got just one more week before the nightmare is over. Rage in the comments below and stay fresh, cheese bags.